Okay, so here we are, Axis Empires, the autumn, August, September 1943. What are the card picks? We're on the Axis side. Tojo expands power. This didn't do a lot, but Japan opened up the war against Communist China. Kansu and Shinkang are now in the war, and it's going to be slow going, even without any weather disadvantage or anything. We're able to do a couple steps damage, but that's going to be partially recoverable. There's this damn headquarters here that I can't get a grip on yet to knock out, and as long as that's there, that's able to support over here, prevent it from retreating and everything. Also, then over on the German side, we had the important card, Speer Appointed Minister. A lot of cards depend on this sucker. It's not that huge in and of itself. It creates a headquarters and gives you some good expansion cards. But the big thing here is that I can keep putting more cards into play that I wouldn't otherwise be able to get. And that's kind of why I said you have to make certain plays before you make others. There may have been things that I could have played. The next card I have looks like it had no restrictions. So I could have played, say, this, but there weren't any of the big offensive cards left to play without this coming into play. On the actual attacks, well, there's mud, and mud is really ugly, and the Germans are stretched kind of thin. They made one attack on Minsk, and actually got pretty good damage there because the stupid headquarters the Russians had moved out of the way to support an attack up here, and that gave them a little bit of an edge. They were trying to fight an attack somewhere else, but their troops are getting quite thin, actually. And over here in Britain, exciting stuff's happening compared to what actually happened in Britain, but you've got them now tracing supply out of Bristol, where they threw a supply convoy, and they're cut off by this air unit. Now, that's only going to remain as long as the air unit, which is going to come off this turn. But they managed to drive the Brits out of Birmingham and back up to Manchester. They're kind of ignoring London now. They can't get the force on it. I think Germany's in a lot of trouble here, but we'll see. And Japan seems to be doing quite well, given that they conquered most of Asia already. All right, on to the Allies. So let's look at the Allied efforts here for cards. Pacific Mobilization, basically getting the U.S. forces into the delay box. This was this was a forced card. The next card's a choice one. And likewise, Lend-Lease to the Allies, doing the same kind of thing. In this case, not so much just pouring troops in, but gave a couple of political pressure points here, where the neutrals pressured for Britain meant that Finland has now leaned toward the Allies. It makes it harder and harder for the Axis to start getting allies as this goes on. And we see they already picked up Spain on their last one. And then there also was a role in the Middle East which could have caused disruptions here because of the value. Well, it turned out to be Persia. Axis has already taken that, so that doesn't end up putting itself into the Axis camp at all. We've got the Lend-Lease counter. I don't know what that does. I'm assuming that'll create more replacement steps for the Brits. And the Brits got some additional troops, and this is actually what's kind of exciting here. They placed, they got their headquarters into play, and now they've got kind of a ring where they're preventing that crossing still from being trivial. The Germans could still possibly force it, but they've got the automatic column shift now for the headquarters in at least one battle a turn, as long as they keep everybody kind of close together. These guys are a little risky at supply because Manchester could cut them. But I can reestablish it through here, so I'm kind of counting on this defense of London being more important at this point. And over in the east, not a lot's going on. I don't know how to play a naval war, and I've never been good with the Pacific Theater or any really purely naval war. Had the point, so I managed to drop the replacements in Yunnan. That's going to be the rebel forces, and I'm shifting British troops from Africa into Australia. Right now, my goal is kind of actually Guadalcanal, because when you look at it positionally, well, here's the problem. It's within 3 of Rabaul, which means I can't land right at Guadalcanal it's within 4, but it can start setting me towards Rabaul, where I can do a land march there and get air support that way. Basically, I've got a problem. What I'd really like to do is get rid of this. So I'm seeing 2 attack locations. One is Guadalcanal and one is Majuro, and they're in the same position. If I can invade either one, Guadalcanal I actually don't have to invade. I still own that. But I can land at either one and then work my way into a position where maybe I can get an invasion on an important location. If I can take these out, well, especially this one, that gets rid of the problem here. This becomes no longer much of a threat, really, which I consider kind of important. Because if I can't, well, I can get supplies into there now. It's not that easy. Anyway, it's really tough for me to play out the naval side of things. I've never really had a good hang on that. And in every game, the naval rules are always the problem for me. You can say, well, it looks like you have problems with lots of rules. Yeah. But these, I have a great deal of difficulty across the board, not just in this game. All right, on to the Ruskies. Damn it, I don't know how I lost track of time. For some reason, this was, and I'm just leaving it as I often leave things. We had an early mud this year. I don't know what that means, but, definitely opposed the Axis. They would have been able to play other things. Would have been able to make more attacks, more successful attacks. I'm certainly not going to reverse it just for the Russians. So we're just going to say, hey, mud came early this year. Sometimes weather does not follow the exact patterns, and well, I guess that's kind of built into the game by making it easy to get confused by the table. I don't have any excuse on this one. Okay, and on the Russian side, they're playing a 0 card again. This is a war progress card, though. They should actually do something. Had to pull out one of their production directorates. They got rid of the heavy bombers. And they got a few extra infantry into place over in the Far East. Nothing too exciting there. They're shifting some troops around. We'll take a look at that. And then over here, this is one of their big cards they have to get out. Relocate war industries. They might have wanted to do this earlier, but it comes with so many infantry steps, 21 replacement steps. They wanted to take some losses first. They still didn't match it all. I think they got like 18. They removed the same production directorate that they had there. And they can only play one of these a year. And I don't know if they all remove a production directorate. They better not, because I'll have to start playing the production directorate soon. In the delay box, they get some headquarters. Those will be very helpful. Headquarters are really useful from what we see. And I roll on the conference table that I don't think I made yet. And I've done everything else. So I'm kind of cheating here. No big shock. I do that all the time, right? Hitler supports nationalists. Well, I better look that one up. Let's briefly look at what happened before I jumped out of the way there. Because there's mud. Oops. Not a lot was still able to be done, but the Russians are able to do a little bit of attrition here. They kind of lost here, and they pushed for some ground down here in Turkey. And they're really winning the Turkish war at this point. They're winning everywhere. They're doing quite well. Now let's look at this. I'll tell you what, I'll look this up and come back if it's at any interest. Neutrals pressured. Wow, that's not right. I'm always forgetting to add my modifiers to this. This should be +1. So shouldn't it? I don't know. Conference table. So it's not Hitler supports nationalists, it's neutrals pressured. That's a bonus. The Russians are going to be able to do kind of what the Allies did over here. And that's how I kind of work. If I miss something, hey, so what? You know, if I can't go back, though, like with the mud easily, I let it stand. If I can go back like with this, I try to catch it at the moment. All right, well, what neutrals would I want to do? I can take the neutrality away from Italy. I don't see a value to that. What I do see a value to is maybe dropping pressure on Syria. There isn't a lot left, and Syria at least is kind of vaguely in my region. I think that's what I'm going to do, and put a Russian influence there, because most of the miners are already in this one way or another. Well, for the Axis, limited attacks, mud of course, this English enclave that had could have been built here in what, Brighton or something, Southampton, I don't know, Southampton it looks like. Yeah. Got hit. We put air support into London. That caused an air battle, of course. And in the north, I think a hex was gained and a little bit of positioning was made so that the Germans don't lose those big units again in attrition. No attack on Minsk this time. No attack here. Pulling the Yugoslavs into Hungary, hoping to get them across into the Ukraine, but there isn't a lot of Ukraine that the Germans can be in. And the Yugoslavs will not be allowed to stay in Poland or Romania. I kind of made a mistake and moved one in there, I think. They can't do that. I'm using them largely as garrison forces in the back, not only at home, but in Budapest and Athens. And I'm not sure why I have one at home, to tell you the truth. That's not terribly risky, but over here in Bulgaria, I can't use them because they're just free passage units. They won't actually join the war away from their country at this point. Over here, I forgot to declare war on Siam, and this time I backed up and did it. You know, I'm kind of wishy-washy about that kind of thing. It's very difficult to keep everything in mind. It didn't have any real effect to back it up like that. So the Japanese swept in there, and that gives them a road route into India, which gets rid of a lot of difficulties that otherwise they might have had. I don't know if I had to supply that. I have a convoy. I don't know what it's doing up here. Yeah, I need that. All right. Ended up with a command failure, but still managed to take the city from Kansu, Yan'an. And now we're moving towards Lanzhou. And that's sort of the big fight there. And also down here in Yunnan, trying to put some screening forces in so those can't do a lot of damage. Like, it would suck if they brought the country back. It's not really that big a difference. I mean, a partisan base is almost equivalent to owning the country. It's just there's that value hex, the strategic hex that's important. All right, let's go to the Allies. Not a lot going on for the Allies. A little bit of repositioning here. Actually moved into Guadalcanal. I'm not sure how these things get produced. I assumed they could be produced in either regular British or regular American units. I couldn't find rules on them specific. They appear to be a multinational, but it's a one-step. But Chinese paratroopers, I don't know enough to really be able to make a reasonable ruling on them, but I couldn't find the rules for them. Anyway, they've shipped into Tarawa, preparing. You're not going to be able to make a jump from there, but there's not a lot of places that they can. They're kind of a weird unit because of that. Now, I think on the last Japanese turn I didn't refresh. They were able to take either a Dutch, or what they want to take, a Philippine unit over there. I don't know if they're really paying any attention here either. Kind of seem to have forgotten to move some of them. Anyway, the I guess that's it over in the Pacific. Over here in Europe, well, the Brits played around and shifted some of their forces a bit, more of a centering on London. They can't move into London because of that air base, interdiction going on. Russia made a couple of attacks and said, "Welcome to the meat grinder. It's mud," but hey, they don't care. They're willing to take losses, and they knocked a couple of good German units down into small things and into the delay box. And that's really the pain the Germans face, is that their units break down and they can't build them right back up. Now, of course, the Russian units go from 1-1-2s up to 3-3-2s, which is pretty good growth. The Germans go from 1-2-3s up to 3-4 or 4-4-3s, and by stacking two together, and that's a pretty nice movement in comparison. Granted, their stuff isn't bad on defense, but on offense, they really need those other units, and those other units have the longer delay, and that makes casualties more painful. In addition to the fact that Russia's got these cards that say, "Oh yeah, take 21 steps," this season. And they've got a lot of cards, not that big, but they've got a lot of cards that really up their strength. And the Germans, well, not so many. Certainly not in that numbering, nowhere near that kind of value. Down here in the Caucasus, or in the Transcaucasus actually, the Russians made a failed attack against the Turks. That was kind of an iffy thing to do. I think it ended up being on the 1-to-1 table because of the terrain, but the feeling is the more of the Nazis you can wipe out and their supporters, the better off we'll be. And losses don't matter with Russia. And they really don't. It's not like the line is weak anywhere. Even here where it's at its weakest, it's not in a lot of danger. You see Baku kind of open, and there's kind of this thought of, you can make it there. Yeah, but so what? I mean, really, without winning the ground battle here, unless it's just a Doinker unit, and there aren't a lot of those, and those are even kind of useful at this point, I can't see grabbing that extra resource space. Alright, I'm going to load this one up. This is the end of the autumn of 43, and we'll move into, this winter turn, but I've tended to do them as part of the next year anyway. One thing that I've noticed that I forgot a number of times, and I don't know how big an effect it's been, but for the Japanese, they haven't been recycling their units as quickly as they should. They should have a -3 on their delay roll, which means quite often some of their stuff is just going to show up the turn after anyway, which is kind of impressive. Of course, with air units and most of the support units, they're not removed until towards, so you don't play them and remove them. You play them and you remove them the next turn during the return to base phase. So there's almost always going to be a 1-turn delay anyway, unless they get knocked out. If they're casualties in fighting, then they go into the delay box immediately. So that's kind of cool. It makes them more worth. It makes it easier for them to recover losses, but it doesn't really make it any easier for them to recover units that they've deployed. Kind of weird. It's easier to recover the stuff that's been casualties, but you're assuming, I guess, cadres and stuff. All right, up it goes, I guess. Victory points. Let me just think about those for a moment. If there's any major change here, if there is, it's on the Asian side. I know I was aiming for Lan Chao, but I think that's the only one I'm trying to get. I don't think there was anything else that got gained, so I'm not going to really count them. Okay. Well, before I zip this up completely, let me just catch a couple of pieces. the USCL delay or whatever, increase USCL hit. And every year that's going to pop up here, and that changes some die roll modifiers. Politically, adds a -1. It's harder to get the miners into an Axis camp. Axis delay and Western delays change as the Axis has harder time fighting the war, and the Allies are getting the supplies from the U.S. And that doesn't really require any convoys or anything special on the map. It just is these delay modifiers that come into play. Another thing I noticed, and this isn't a big deal, I think, but it's kind of important. I was just putting a German headquarters in play, and I see, or in their pool, and I see they had one already. And that's really a shame that I don't know how long, but certainly in this last production, I could have put that headquarters into play. And headquarters are really important in terms of being able to project defensive zones, as it were. Yeah, they can only act in one combat, but it kind of it makes it harder to commit to the combat as the attacker when you know there's a headquarters there, because you don't know which one it's going to jump into and totally bone. And not only does it add its strength, it adds a "you will not retreat" mandate, and it adds a column shift. So between those things, they really have a huge swing on a single round, on a single combat roll. Anyway, the Germans not having one kind of here has been a definite problem. And, well, they couldn't have had one here because this is in Poland, but they could have had one here or here and shifted another one up. It's been a kind of painful thing. Anyway, finally, last time I'm going to say this, up it goes.